Tell His Mother, Volume 1. To my parents, who struggled with the heartbreaks of immigration, who felt defenseless amid slithering incessant dangers and unfathomable strangers, who had to endure a lifetime with the heartache of seeing their troubled son, who was very proud of himself, as he was creating vast distances so easily. Confessions of Gyro the Apostate. Samsara. Part 1. Let it be said, so the accusation may also have a voice. To return to her mother-in-law's doorstep with such a decision was unkind. Standing by the immense monumental garden gate, Jyoti waited for a sign. The metalwork revealed the presence of Hermes, partially concealed as he was, in the flow and bend of distracting patterns of bronze. And it spoke to her, as all things began to speak with her again, after so many years. The whispers conferred among themselves. She brings treason, she brings war, she brings the anger of the gods. The divine messenger appeared before her in a haze, and she was too distracted by the dark clouds gathering behind him. A pity, to bring to this doorstep the annihilation of friendships and a cessation of family. A pity, perhaps, but what was the alternative? To live a life of shame with a criminal? An obscurity behind bars. Was this an omen of her life to come? Let her confessions be taken from her. She had little time left. The journey back home would be even longer. Who knows if she will even make it back? For what reason did she become like this? Her stomach was pilling from everywhere, making her want to throw up again. She had to remember her reasons. Not from fickleness, not from fear, not from shame, but for dignity. Soon it will all be over, but even then, she would still carry this place in her memories, for as long as the wheel of time permitted it, before she forgot everything that was important. There was such a heart-aching pull here, the presence of cherished things. From their nighttime citadels were warning her not to engage them in battle. It deserved a moment of silent respect, and so she had to linger a bit, staring at this smoothly paved stone driveway leading to mother-in-law's mansion. It was not a small thing to bring pain to people who loved you. She should know better, especially since mother-in-law taught her everything else, including to give honor where it is due, that much at least. This Mediterranean mansion had been like a fairy tale palace, a place of upliftment, a secret land of power. It was destined to become the stage of Jyoti's many rebirths. Visions in the corners manifested themselves through the fog. Can you see from here? A voice like her own called her. Abandon your pride. And another one came. Get away from here. You bring great danger. Stay on the path. This one was from the winged messenger. It felt warm, welcoming, and had life in it. Through it, she saw clearly again. The driveway was grand. It was made for entrances, fit for deities and monarchs, to step in and open the world for majesty to follow. Yes, a place of power and awakening. It has remained all these years, each an age and a lifetime. Take your happiness that was left here and go back home. The voice was another Jyoti's, but she knew it was one of many. Like a ghost bearing her face, this part of her spoke with authority. Forgetfulness is the forerunner. Fear comes on his footsteps, horsemen riding for plunder. The darkness reclaims her children. Joy will be taken from you and sold as a cheap trinket in the market. Who will buy it? All worth nothing. Such was the world they all lived in, for a time at least. Another voice. This one was the saint she would like to become. Take a moment and relish the power that is attraction. Take a moment and take your place here. There is certainty even in uncertainty. Reclaim wherever memories of past footsteps have grown. Take a moment and yield to this, the traces of Lord Harry's appearances in your life. Devotion is as delicious as freedom. Like a constellation, this best version of her, holding a giant calotropes in her palms, was offering the Eruku flowers above her head as she recited words of power. Om, mighty God with a curved trunk, whose charm is that of a child, whose body has an aura like many suns joined together, make my path obstacle-free today. Let it be so. The wind picked up and made its way through the treetops' boughs, carrying what Jyoti hoped to hear. It blew and flew, but will relief appear in time? In the hesitation, she felt the centuries of strife slip inside her. Continue on the path of justice. Continue on the path of anger. You could burn all this to the ground. She had, after all, been furious all of this week. She had been reimagining herself arguing again with the notion of faces that people this continent. Yes, you sick mlechas, Ayurveda not only predates modern medicine, but it's also more effective. Don't give yourself airs. You're nothing compared to me. Lucky for everyone, she didn't talk to people. Anger was an approach that had always made her feel brave after she got a boyfriend. She had adapted to it, to deal with her fearful condition. Yes, anger gave power, but somehow it felt like being in a tunnel vision. Besides, was not anger an ugly tendency? Ugliness distracted from the preciousness of truth. Ugliness caused distortion and disorder. How then will she welcome the divine presence if she had burned her own heart to ash and coal? She could choose a different path, let her soul fly in a wonderful state of consciousness. Worship attraction, devote yourself to attachment. Love was a memory. Can you see over there? The plum trees, with their delightful pink flowers, could be taken in from here, just a little higher. In this more soothing state of mind, she was attracted to what she could be. Had she not mastered the art of bubble making? She had learned how to induce herself in a trance, where she had stored positive energy. The secret of her technique lay in music. Great delusion was well on its way again now. As often as she repulsed it, in a cycle of minutes, the hate would come again. Feeling no other salvation, she welcomed the bubble emerging from the imaginary wellsprings of pure refuge. A tune appeared out of the mist, like a raindrop clinging to a leafy branch, breaking away slowly, reaching lower by degrees, seeking precious intimacy. Teeny tiny it was in shape and size, with the impression of being too delicate to hold a space of its own in this ever-expanding universe. Yet, on the drop's simple reflective surface, one could see a grand forest of redwoods, and hiding within its dense green foliage were the treasures of the good life. The sphere was made of light, polychromatic and ambiguous. It now hovered around Jyoti's face. She was of course attracted to it, for in the comfort of this transfer of energy, she felt herself seduced by the memory of previous attachments. In this altered state of the mind, she felt a tide of longing for familiar shores, and she eagerly exposed herself to this approaching glow of power. There it was, the yearning that was king of all. Transparent, yet carrying the potential of all colors, the bubble that had made of her mind a center of gravity now announced the birth of beatific rainbows. Being fantastic, it held promise. Being fruitful, it sought praise. Its orbit became shorter until slowly and elegantly it merged with her being. A splash of pleasure came and introduced a delicate lens with which to see her thoughts, a clarity that displayed the radiant energy of attractiveness. This was the very essence of her relationship with the three worlds. Attraction was everywhere. It made people desire intimacy and caused them to fall in love. It bestowed fidelity to country and pride in ancestral traditions. It made destinations desirable and objects irreplaceable. At the core of all civilizations and humane religions, attraction should be worshipped. She remembered this song that was clear and true. It was Voices in the Wind by the very talented Terry Oldfield. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Respectful obeisance to Lord Vishnu, Supreme Personality, Preserver of the world, Spreader of attraction, Champion of compassion, all-encompassing God. Wasn't it delightful? The mantra swept over her like a warm wave, and it grew louder. The treasures of life also grew like coral around her feet. Seduction, beauty, and elegance, were they not charming? Growth, kindness, and affection, were they not endearing? Following the path of interconnecting moving circles, she saw herself as Matsya, the first divine incarnation of Lord Vishnu. When everything was destroyed, he alone remained. In him was all the knowledge of everything before it was divided. And yet, after the division, nothing was lost. So long as one remained, there was nothing that could not be remade, because the one wanted to share its secrets. There was all of human history in her blood. There was all of humanity's struggle, all of its sufferings, all of its victories, and all of its disillusionments. She was walking a path well trodden. If she had suffered, others had done so too. With her own voice, another her called out, "You are not alone in this. Everyone shares the burden. This is the proof." There was much to doubt about in this world, and everyone wanted their way of life to triumph. Each nation wanted its traditions to be glorified, being swayed by the power of attraction. It would be this tiny fish, however, that would grow and save the world from greed and corruption. Divide yourself and isolate what is from what isn't, what ought to be from what is disgraceful. Otherwise, you will be overwhelmed by the great numbers. Was the world not like an ocean? Thoughts then were its waves. Gilded memories and popular sentiments, these were the lightning and clouds provoking the waves to move restlessly over a surface of uncertainty. Like a tiny fish learning to swim, and the never-ending cycles of the currents of life, the universal soul was found in the moment between emotions, in the middle of before and after. What is there? There is the before and after already there, waiting to emerge. When evil abounds, the Lord will incarnate himself in the world. When evil abounds, the Lord of triumph will act to save the world. As he has done in the past, so he shall do again. Doubt becomes joy, sadness leads to devotion, divinity is discovered in compatibility. Well, if delusions were what awaited her, they can come, and she will defeat them. She made herself feel at ease at being alone and unique, carrying inside her the worth of her heritage. She will find her solace in this new world without her husband, with her hard-earned freedom. Observing the large property, Jyoti took her first steps, her boots splashing in some puddles. The twin circular driveways before her each led to the mansion. There was always a faster way, in and out, but dignity demanded no shortcuts. The stairway, forming sharp turns, was coming up the slope to the mansion. Look at this symmetrical zigzagging path. It was lit from the ground up by 4 parallel rows of evenly spaced Doric columns, accosting the way up. One row had marble flower pot planters with colorful blossoms, and the taller row, rounded lamps that looked like full moons. In between were the fruit trees. The turns formed 3 levels, each one with its own unique smell. She was ready to pass through the gate. The precision of the metalwork of the garden gates, the realization of fine and painstaking to create detail. Did it not become evident what it meant for a worker ending her labor? An unawakened soul must live and breathe, settling in with the comforts of routine. There was order emerging from the chaos. The cosmos was proof of it. From the Greek, to order, to prepare, to arrange. That was one of the first things mother-in-law had inculcated in her student. Certainty emerges from uncertainty. We all build our own mansions, one brick, one experience at a time. The closer we come to completion, the less chaos holds sway. The uncertainty of the beginning, the doubt of the middle, all vanish when all is accomplished, and joy has returned to reclaim the crown. And so, there's design and purpose. It is through the accumulation of years, when a soul is given a space to expand, through the recollection of moments and events, small and large. Then, and only then, can she begin to draw measure of the true value of the ultimate accomplishment, to delight in one's own self. Say it, I am wonderful. I have lived and accomplished great things. No longer a prisoner, no longer a stranger, but a friend. And what better advisor is there than a clear-sighted mind? Was she selfish for wanting to leave her husband? The prudish folk would deny her the ambition she needed to complete her task. They would stain that word with selfishness, a negative notion, drawn out from wherever ugliness came, associated with gluttonous men and notorious wine-bibbers. If she loved to think and to believe, to see beyond the shams and deceits of the world, and to look directly at its realities, then her ambition to follow such ideals did not reduce her sincerity in the least. She was worth her dignity, and will remain on this path. Ambition was beautiful. Ambition, so long as it stayed on the journey of growth, was to be cherished as the modern prayer. It was because of the great awakening that was taking place among human beings in her time, particularly among women, that Jyoti began her own quest to find what was true and proper for herself. Did you notice that the lights of the veranda were on? Versions of herself appeared and disappeared in greater numbers, filling the spacious property. They were conscious beings like her, sharing her senses from other dimensions of the divine mind. All these years, she had ignored them, and she hoped they had gone away. Yes, there was light in this world, even in the darkness coming with its armies. Here on this path, but also in the destination, they were bonfires of welcome, boons for ambitious travelers who, like her, were seeking safety. Keys in her trembling hand, she ventured deeper into mother-in-law's property. Who knew what spells the sorceress had cast into existence from the realm of chaos? A witch of that caliber could be able to make Jyoti change shapes. How much easier for a mind to be changed then? Whether she became a dog, a frog, a spider, a viper, or an owl, it had to end tonight. The version of herself that was attached to these experiences may also end tonight, but she will be mourned by others who bore her face and energy. Find me, remember me, I died doing my best. Look here, reenactments of secret stories brought to life, and she was pulled into this mystery, being exposed to the tally of her previous struggles with delusion. The presence of this magical dimension, hiding traps and obstacles, came to her like the raging sea. Taking a deep breath, Jyoti pushed her index finger against her forehead, pinning divine energy to the third eye, so that she will not have to worry about losing her memory tonight, surrounded by all these waves of uncertainty. Emotions were currents after all, and it was crucial to stay calm. She knew what the upcoming confrontation would do to her, if she actually had the audacity to go through with it. Her hallucinations had returned this week, to such a level which she had only experienced as a child, and she became terrified of herself. It was only a matter of time before she regained all of her cursed condition. When she was welcomed into this family, like the new daughter of the house, something in the nature of a miracle happened. The most abusive symptoms of her incurable neurodegenerative disease receded, coming back only on occasions of catastrophic stress. They resurfaced randomly for the most part, but with no danger to herself. They had become mere curiosities, aftershocks of previous, bigger explosions, detected from a distance, in other dimensions. A team of scientists bearing her face and energy signature, they could analyze and theorize about such outliers and singularities. Let them understand, through a distance. Find the patterns if you like, make theories, test them out. Her hallucinations, her struggle to speak coherently, her panic attacks, her blank facial expressions, her inability to swallow, her indiscernible small voice, her convulsions, all of these were lessened in stature, and for the first time in her life, she could be near normal. How liberating to see what was in plain sight. Was it because this family showed her so much affection, when even her own blood was ashamed of her condition? Was it because she had fallen madly in love, and unsurprisingly, passion conquered all? Yes, more or less, she had been transformed into a reasonably normal, breathing, and thinking person. That was all true. But here she was, ready to throw this preciousness away. Here she was, on the threshold of inviting all of her symptoms to come back with a vengeance. These signs of humiliation, coming at her like a crowd of offended villagers, wooden sticks in the air, they had to be turned away. This was no time to consider other possibilities. This was no time to entertain doubts. This was no time for inaction. She had to do what she set out to do. There was no way she would stay married to a man who believed that it was morally acceptable to send innocents to their deaths. Married to a man like that? Never. Not in a million life cycles. There was so much of the negative she felt hovering about her still. It began with anxiety, the presence of chaos. It was all-out war with fear, the warden in the prison of the voiceless. So she reminded herself that as the law of life, the bad was merely a spoke in the wheel of time, as was the good. Surely, and with certainty, relief followed distress, and anxiety, tied and harnessed, will be ridden like a chariot. Fear will always be replaced with jubilation. Victory was near. Can you feel the good lingering by? Yes, it had rained last night, enveloping the world with freshness, even though the weather was still a bit chilly. It will rain again today. These were part of the cycle. Keeping to the path, Jyoti walked by the fruit trees, decorating each platform on the staircase. Judging by the benches placed there, each of these platforms was meant as a resting place, "Sit and recover here," they called out to her. "Think." The trees seemed to move, and she didn't feel the wind yet. How to see the real meaning behind this design? Mother-in-law forced meaning into life, controlling the forces of chaos so that order can emerge from it. This control of design gave her control over other levels of this world. Do you understand? There were oranges growing at the base, sweet and titillating. This stage was the exciting optimism of youth, fed by innocence. On the second platform, there were lemons, bitter but rejuvenating. This was the tabulation of failures, brought on by experiencing betrayal and defeat. And the last platform had plums, hopeful and wise. This was the smell of perseverance and the beauty of rediscovered hope. "You deserve praise, for you are wise. Honor and homage to you," she said as she joined her hands together. The wind came now with a rush and carried her forward as her large eyes followed her long single-oiled braid, billowed up to spread before her at full length and pointing the path forward, pulling her braid to her back, straightening her yellow single-breasted trench coat. Jyoti began to also smooth out the hem of her boat-neck lace-sheath dress that was form-fitting and very alluring, being in the color of Chianti wine. It had always made her cherish loyalty. Why did the trees move when there was no wind? But now that the wind came, they didn't move. Holding on to her cute peanut-colored satchel with her left hand, thinking of strength, she clasped her dazzling Jaipur Amazonite necklace with her right fist, drawing from its power of calm. Putting a foot on the staircase, she started climbing this path, one step at a time. There will be test and temptation, but there will also be a time for rest and contemplation. Her stomach was melting, and her eyes were tugging at the sockets. Patience. The labor was long in coming, but freedom from obligation was worth it. The past was the past. Wasn't it better to divide time in this way? The path was certainly leading to the house. Doubts came again to the open sky of Jyoti's mind, just like the gray thickening clouds, which were quickly covering this faraway town. The multitude of tall trees began shedding their immobile disguises and terrorized her soul as they stepped forward. With the flick of their branches, they reached out and tried to capture her. Fear made her stop, and darkness came over her eyes. Had she fallen? The heaven above was moving slowly. She floated over the waves. Look at these lies people tell themselves. Look at these deceptions those normal people surrender to. They can't win either. No one can be as victorious as the Lord has been. Many people wanted her marriage to fail. Many, like Markella, just waited for that day. Though theirs was not the will to alter the wheel of time, their wish will happen nonetheless. Jyoti could have stayed here forever, torture in the hell of uncertainty. This was mother-in-law's secret power after all, chaos. From it, she could create what she wanted. Hasn't she accomplished the impossible already? From rags to riches, from obscurity to great fame, in the face of terror and hopelessness, the wind arrived at last and hummed in Jyoti's cheeks. It carried the answer to her overwhelming predicament. It shared a fragrance to her nose. It was a jasmine scent, carrying the power of lovers' precious longing. "Help is on the way," the wind said, as it caressed her cheeks. Wasn't tenderness a treasure? The relief was in her tears, waiting to be freed. Weren't these few words of hope so precious? It was so powerful. It was all a suffering soul needed to hear. Help is on the way. Do not, then, despair. In a state of curious frenzy, Jyoti rose from the dark waves of her mind, smiling. she will win back her dignity. It will all change tonight, after completing this last task for this phase of her life. With her connection to the oldest tradition in human history, with the savior of the three worlds as her ally, she will be victorious. Replaying the song over again, she focused on the words of the mantra with every 2 steps she took. You see, she made it all the way up, without a rest. She wasn't panting at all. She wasn't aching in her bones. Her body was not as bad as she often had convinced herself. The flower beds went around the mansion. Even here, there was meaning. There in that circle were the lavenders, with their serenity and grace. And beyond that, the jasmine, with their love and beauty. Jyoti's soul acquired the power of the great mystical utterance, and thus she found herself glowing with readiness, full of courage. How sweet the presence of the Lord! How sweet was yearning! Let it come, let the goal be reached. The double doors were in sight. With a bold step, she ventured forward, consciously taking note of objects in her way. She had learned to do this as a child, trying to catch the landmarks along the bus route, so she won't forget where she was going. Through discernment, there was awareness. Through repetition, there was knowledge. Through remembrance, there was safety. Through the many, there was one. You see, even an ordinary person could forget things and get distracted and miss something that should be very important. The difference with her was the extreme degree of her sensations, which made her lose all connection to her surroundings. Her emotions were simply too powerful, and since they were watered at the same roots, they also shared in her achievements. Did they not speak to her with her voice, as if they were all in a circle of elders? "Welcome, sisters," she said to all the parts of herself, the ones she liked, the ones she was ashamed of, and the ones she feared. What level of power she had gained through knowledge and sacrifice, the rest of her benefited as well. Sometimes she hated her emotions. They would crush every conscious thought she wanted to entertain. It was very sweet of Andy, though, to have given her the album in which she first heard this delightful song. The album was called Spirit of India. It was a rich compilation of mantras and bhajans, produced strangely by a white person. Her lover had given it to her as a gift for her 20th birthday. The album and the memory it evoked were very dear to her, and so she smiled, innocently. A gentle breeze came again, a forerunner to salvation. Don't you smell the flowers? Freshness here and rebirth there. The seductive eagerness of spring softened her heart, welcoming in her an irresistible attraction for the interlocking pavers set before the double doors of the main entrance. Pearl-like in their beauty they became, these stones that led to the house of wisdom. Beauty was the divine design. No one could escape it. Let everyone love beauty and make beautiful things. Have you forgotten? These were the same paths in which Andy had professed his love for her, by introducing her to his family as the love of his life. Here he led her for the first time, with such precaution, as if they were living on clouds, and they could escape like shooting stars. His gentleness was precious. She had braved a panic attack to come to this house. What if she had decided not to come here on that day? How different would her life have been? What if she had decided not to follow her heart from the outset? She was in awe of this boy who became her lover. He was charming, funny, wise, seductive, and very easy on the eyes. He laughed, and everyone around him became happy. How easily she let him touch her, terrified even though she was. She had trembled the first time, simply when she saw him looking at her. But wait, what do we have here? There was a lime-colored car parked by the Tier water fountain. right around the bend. Jyoti couldn't recognize the make, so she walked up to it, slowly, as if it were an alligator. No, don't conjure up such creatures, not in this place of magic. Plymouth Barracuda. It looked a lot like Andy's car. American muscle, probably of the same era. Image recognition led to concept retention. An expensive object that was prized and cherished said a lot about its owner. For instance, this vehicle could only mean that mother-in-law had a guest, a male, very likely Caucasian, within her age group. Give or take 5 years, Profali had no age really. Had it been a sports car of recent years model, this would show that the owner had no regard for relationships or connections, like a young man eager to prove himself. I have my voice. Listen. But this classic type of automobile showed that the man inside was very possibly a delusional gigolo, one who lived in the good old days of the past, where the power of being an attractive male was somehow magically restored. Could Andy really be considered in the same light? Would his car be found soon in some other woman's driveway?